Our theme for the month of May is compassion, giving love and support to the poor. And poor has so many meanings for us. And part of it is, too, not just when we're speaking of impoverishment or when we're speaking of abundance in some kind of financial way or in some kind of material way, but also those of us who are poor in self-acceptance or who are poor in friendships or who are poor in interconnecting skills with others or any of a million other ways. So we can all see ourselves as abundant or poor in various aspects of our lives. So our compassion in supporting the poor extends outward into recognizing that sometimes that's us, but sometimes we're the abundant one in some way. In kindness or wisdom or compassion, we're called to come forward with that kind of compassionate support. So this morning, I'm asking the question, are you my mother? There's a little children's book where this little, I think it's a little bunny, or no, it's a chicken. It hatches while its mother is out getting food for it because she knows it's coming and she's going to go gather some stuff. And the little chicken then hatches and immediately goes looking for its mother. And it asks every animal it sees, are you my mother? Are you my mother? And, you know, they all say no, but in a way they are. They're assisting that little creature to come forward. When we come into the world as children, we have a particular way of looking at things. And no matter what our relationships are with those who are parenting us, we go through these stages of responding to the world in an automatically compassionate way that assumes certain things and does not know other things yet. Does this sound at all familiar, those of you who are parents? Little kids, they like to feel like they know everything. They want to participate in everything. They will launch out sometimes, or they will state something in a very matter-of-fact way to you that is not your understanding of it as an adult, but it's very clear to them how the world works in some particular way. So I want to share this Mother's Day story with you. This woman writes, so we had this great 10-year-old cat named Jack, who just recently died. Jack was a great cat, she says, and the kids would carry him around and sit on him, and nothing ever bothered him. He used to hang around and nap all day long on his mat in our bathroom. Well, we have 3 kids, and at the time of this story, they were 4 years old, 3 years old, and 1 year old. And the middle one was Eli. Eli really loves chapstick, loves it. He kept asking to use my chapstick and then losing it. So finally one day I showed him where in the bathroom I keep my chapstick and how he could use it whenever he wanted to, but he needed to put it right back in the drawer when he was done. Last year on Mother's Day, we were having the typical rush around trying to get ready for church with everyone crying and carrying on. My 2 boys were fighting over the toy in the cereal box. I was trying to nurse my little one, and at the same time I was putting on my makeup. Everything was a mess. Everyone had long forgotten that this is a wonderful day to honor me and the amazing job that is motherhood. Well, we finally had the older one and the baby loaded into the car, and I was looking for Eli. I had searched everywhere when I finally rounded the corner to go into the bathroom, and there was Eli. He was applying my chapstick very carefully to Jack's rear end. Eli looked right into my eyes and said, chapped. Now, if you have a cat, you know that he was right. Their little butts do look pretty chapped, and frankly, Jack didn't seem to mind. The only question to really ask at that point was whether it was the first time Eli had done that to the cat's behind, or the 100th. And that is, she says, my favorite Mother's Day moment ever, because it reminds us that no matter how hard we try to civilize these glorious little creatures, there will always be that day when you realize they've been using your chapstick on the cat's butt. And so she says, that is why my lips stayed chapped on Mother's Day. And I think that is my favorite Mother's Day story of all time. So we ask the question really, who are our mothers? Who are our mothers? Mothers are not just the female people who brought us into the world physically. Mothers are so much more than that. We encounter them really everywhere throughout our lives. So all the people that we encounter who mentor us, who coach us, who give us unconditional caring and acceptance, who help guide us or hold us accountable for things that we've done, our teachers, our mentors, those are all moms. And so all of us serve as moms in various ways to people and have over the course of our lives. People that we support in some way, that we encourage, that we've given guidance to, that we have taken in, that we have worked with. So they may be friends or relatives. In Hawaii, there is a term for chosen family. I think I just went off. Did I? Did I just go off? How odd. Okay, well, I might be out of battery or something. Oh, no, there I am again. Well, that's interesting. So in Hawaii, they refer to family as ohana. So chosen family is ohana. Now, if we're very fortunate, some of our ohana is also our blood family. That's really the best. But there are times when even our blood family is not who we want to be with or not who we're feeling connected to or happy with. There's an interesting passage in the three synoptic gospels that's very similar, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then there's something a little bit different than that in John. But I want to share these with you first and then put it into possibly a context. So in the Gospel of Mark it says, when Jesus' mother and brothers arrived, standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him and they told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and brothers, he said. And then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and said, here are my mother and brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Okay, that may not have been easy for his family to hear. In the Gospel of Mark, it's almost the same thing. Jesus' mother and brothers arrived, standing outside. I read that. That was Mark. This is Matthew. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, so it's a little different, his mother and brothers stood outside waiting to speak to him, and someone told him, your mother and brothers are outside wanting to speak to you. And he replied, who is my mother and who are my brothers? And pointing to his disciples, he said, here are my mother and brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother or sister or mother. And then in Luke it says, they came to see him, they were not able to get near him because of the crowd, and someone said, your mother and brothers are standing outside, and he said, my mother and brother are those who hear God's word and put it into practice, implying maybe that they didn't. I don't know. Now, here is something very similar in the book of John, not exactly the same. So John writes this, but when the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. So since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world. For even his own brothers did not believe in him. Therefore Jesus said to them, my time is not yet here. For you any time will do. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that its works are evil. You go to the festival. I'm not yet going up to this festival because my time has not yet fully come. And after he said this, he stayed in Galilee. However, his brothers had left for the festival, and afterward he went also, not publicly, but in secret. All right, now think about this. This is John chapter 7. In chapter 2, John talks about the wedding feast at Cana. And the wedding feast at Cana, you'll remember, is a time when there's a big celebration. All the family and friends are there, the disciples are there and stuff, and they run out of wine for the festivities. And they don't want the host and the groom to be embarrassed. So Jesus' mother comes over to him and she says, they've run out of wine. And he says, well, what does that have to do with me, woman? My time has not yet come. Like, Mom, give me a break. And she says, not to him, but to the wine stewards, do whatever he tells you. Okay, now he's kind of stuck, right? And so the next thing we know, he turns the water into wine. But he wasn't ready. He didn't want to do it yet. Anybody's mother ever push you to do something you weren't quite ready to do? That happened not too long before this, okay? So it may have been, I don't know if it chronologically happened that way, but it may have been that he was still a little miffed when they arrived to interrupt him in the middle of his preaching. And so he said, well, who are my mother and brothers really? You know, you guys are my mother and brothers. Like, to them, you know, leave me alone. And so when in John, his brothers say, well, why don't you go up and prove yourself? Go show yourself off. You're going to be this big man. He's the older brother, right? They're taunting him, it seems like to me. They don't really believe in him. They're saying, well, let's go up to the festival. You can show yourself off so your disciples can see what you can do. Let's see what you can do, big man. He says, I'm not going. For you, any time is good. You can go anytime. You know, you're not big stuff. So go ahead and go. And then later he goes secretly so they won't see him. It does sound like a sibling thing going on there to me underneath the language that's used there. I don't know that, but I imagine that as someone who was God realized, but also a human being, that there were times, being the oldest brother, that Jesus was not so happy with his younger siblings or with his mom, and this was perhaps one of those times. So in the context of a divine teacher and guide, I think it's helpful to recognize that even Jesus had days with his mom that were not good days. There were times when it was challenging or it was difficult, and his response was, who is my mother? You know, not this one who gives me such a hard time. And somehow or other, they all took it in and got through it. We find that our mothers are all around us, and sometimes our mothers are the people that we have the most challenge with or the most difficulty with in the moment. That person actually is there not to irritate us, but to open something in us, to allow us to blossom forward in a more powerful way. That there is some resistance that it's maybe time for us to move through, and that person kind of sparks that, like the sand in the oyster a little bit, so that you can bring forth the pearl. When we look at mothers, what we're seeing is something bigger than just those women. We're also seeing the earth itself. And how do we treat our mother? Do we treat our mother with respect and kindness? Do we treat our mother with love? Do we take care of our mother when she needs it? Whoever mother is. But mother is also, you know, all of these people and their roles in our lives, but it's also the earth, this solar system, this galaxy, this universe is constantly birthing from the cells in our bodies to new stars that are being formed out in the universe. Birthing is going on all the time, and everything within the system is also giving birth. It's also bringing forth. Anybody in here ever had an idea? I'm assuming that, you know, if you didn't raise your hand, you just don't want to raise your hand. Because I know that you've all had ideas, you know. Then you have given birth to something, if you had an idea. If you created anything, if you mentored anybody, if you taught somebody something, then you have mothered, you have provided that. Ideas and people are our children and our creations. I'm going to do a wedding in September up in British Columbia. And it's for a man who was in my congregation there, a gay man. The partner he had at that time, and he broke up, and it was very difficult for a while. And then he met someone, and they fell in love, and they're going to get married. And so he sent me, as we were talking this week about the wedding, he sent me an email with YouTube links to all the music that's going to be in the ceremony. And the last one he sent me was actually the music for the first dance that the fellows are going to do with their moms at the reception. And I'd never heard this song before. And It is by a man named Callum Scott, and it's called No Matter What. One of the things about the love that comes from a nurturing mother figure is this idea that you are loved because you are, no matter what. And so I want to read the lyrics to this song to you. When I was a young boy, I was scared of growing up. I didn't understand it, but I was terrified of love. Felt like I had to choose, but it was out of my control. I needed to be saved. I was going crazy on my own. It took me years to tell my mother. I expected the worst. I gathered all the courage in the world. She said, I love you no matter what. I just want you to be happy and always be who you are. She wrapped her arms around me, said, don't try to be what you're not, because I love you no matter what. She loves me no matter what. I got a little older, wishing all my time away, riding on the pavement. Every sunny day was gray. I trusted in my friends, then all my world came crashing down. I wish I never said a thing, because to them, I'm a stranger now. I ran home. I saw my mother, was written on my face. Felt like I had a heart of glass about to break. She said, I love you no matter what. I just want you to be happy and always be who you are. She wrapped her arms around me, said, don't try to be what you're not, because I love you no matter what. She loves me no matter what. Now I'm a man, and I'm so much wiser. I walk the earth with my head held higher. I got the love that I need, but I was still missing one special piece. My father looked at me. He said, I love you no matter what. I just want you to be happy and always be who you are. He wrapped his arms around me and said, don't try to be what you're not, because I love you no matter what. He loves me no matter what. And they love me no matter what. I said to him, I hope you have Kleenex, because when this dance happens, not just you and your mom, but every one of us out there listening to this song and watching that you guys dance with your moms, we're going to be in tears. We're going to need the Kleenex when that happens. They love you no matter what. It's one of the things when you have a friend or a mentor or a coach or a parent or, whomever it might be, and we can look at the earth and the universe this way too, that we are loved no matter what. And when we have even one person in our lives who loves us no matter what, we have the feeling that we can get through what we need to get through even when we're not with them, because we have that in the background available to us to lean on. So what is mothering, really? This is mothering and Ohana. All these people, all these different people, all these faces, all these races, all these ages, all these sizes. What is mothering? Mothering is when we're listening. When we're paying attention to what it is that that person is needing or feeling, and we respond by witnessing it and by supporting them in it. Not necessarily by giving advice, unless they're asking for that. By having the courage to tell them the truth. Sometimes that's not easy. Sometimes that's difficult. By holding them accountable. Something interesting happens when we hold people accountable. What we're telling them is, I believe in you. I believe you can do better. I believe you know better. I believe you are better. Live your truth, that deeper who that you are. And so we're soothing, we're encouraging, but we're also holding each other to a higher standard of being. And who then is family? Well, family is whoever we choose to include as family. This community is family. And so if you're in this room today, you're family. It doesn't matter if this is the first time you've ever been here. You're family. If you've been here since the church was founded, you're family. You're part of the roots of the whole thing. We are family together. And so I want to say, because this is a Sunday where we've been welcoming new members and acknowledging mothers, that last time we had New Member Sunday, Sarah and Genesis became new members, and Sarah has gotten a new job in Ashland, Oregon, and this is their last Sunday with us. So I really want to acknowledge how much we love Sarah and Genesis and have loved having them with us. And Sarah has brought some little tiny samples and information about CBD oils, which can be helpful for people in a variety of circumstances. They're not psychoactive, so don't worry about that. But they're available if you want to pick up information or get one of those over by the coffee. And so I told her, great, you put those out for people, that would be great. So we wish you well. We know you're going to do well. Ashland's a wonderful place. We're sorry to be losing you, but they're getting a great family as part of their ohana there. And so, how do we love all of our mothers, including ourselves? How do we love all these people in all these different roles? How do we recognize and become the mother to ourselves? Now, I won't ask you to raise hands about this. It's a personal question. But if you maybe were someone who had a mom that wasn't too skilled, then maybe you were someone who didn't get what you needed from that nurturing, or hopefully nurturing, relationship. You didn't get it because the nurturing wasn't there. Maybe your mom wasn't available, or she wasn't able to do it, or she didn't know how, or she did her best, but it didn't really work well. You didn't connect, whatever it was. The question then becomes, what are you doing about that? And I don't mean with your mom. I mean, what are you doing about that to create that healing that you need? Because now you're in the role of mother to that part of yourself. And it's your job now to step up to nurturing that one that you are, to asking for what you need, to giving yourself what is healthy and transformative for you. And so when we're honoring all of mothering today, we're honoring all those roles and ourselves and our universe, because all of it is mother, all of it is happening. And the compassion that we give, beginning with ourselves, to all of those that we encounter, and to the planet and the universe, really, and all that we allow ourselves to receive in the way of support, is mothering. The giving out of mothering and the receiving and welcoming of mothering, both. And so, Dr. Linus Pauling said this. I didn't realize he was funny, but I love this. He said, "Do unto others 20% better than you would expect them to do unto you, to correct for subjective error." I'm going to read that again. Do unto others 20% better than you would expect them to do unto you, to correct for subjective error. So just in case we think that they should be doing more for us and subjectively we're not recognizing that, we should up our givingness to them by 20%. I like that. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, God is love. Whatever the impulsion of the universe is, it is love, beneficence, it is kindness, it is compassion, it is sweetness, truth, beauty. It is friendly toward us. And so I want to share a little story with you as I come to the end of the talk this morning, because this is so dear. Like most elementary schools, it was typical to have a parade of students in and out of the health clinic throughout the day. We dispensed ice for bumps and bruises, Band-Aids for cuts, and liberal doses of sympathy and hugs. As the principal, my office was right next door to the clinic, so I often dropped in to lend a hand and help out with the hugs. I knew that for some kids, mine might be the only one they got all day. One morning, I was putting a Band-Aid on a little girl's scraped knee. Her blonde hair was matted, and I noticed that she was shivering in her thin little sleeveless blouse. And I found her a warm sweatshirt and helped her to put it on. "Thanks for taking care of me," she whispered as she climbed into my lap and snuggled up against me. It wasn't long after that when I ran across an unfamiliar lump under my arm. Cancer, an aggressively spreading kind, had already invaded 13 of my lymph nodes. I pondered whether or not to tell my students about my diagnosis. The word breast seemed so hard to say out loud to them. and the word cancer seemed so frightening. When it became evident that the children were going to find out one way or another, either the straight scoop from me or possibly a garbled version from someone else, I decided to tell them. It wasn't easy to get the words out, but the empathy and concern in their faces as I explained it to them told me I'd made the right decision. When I gave them a chance to ask questions, they mostly wanted to know how they could help. I told them that what I would like best would be their letters, pictures, and prayers. I stood by the gym door as the solemn children filed out. My little blonde friend darted out of the line and threw her arms around me, and then she stepped back to look up into my face. "Don't be afraid, Dr. Perry," she said earnestly. "I know you'll be back because now it's our turn to take care of you." And no one could have ever done a better job. The kids sent me off to my first chemotherapy session with a hilarious book of nausea remedies that they had written. A video of every class in the school singing Get Well songs accompanied me to the next chemotherapy appointment. By the third visit, the nurses were all waiting at the door to find out what I would bring next. It was a delicate music box that played I Will Always Love You. Even when I went into isolation at the hospital for a bone marrow transplant, the letters and pictures kept coming until they covered every wall of my room. And then the kids traced their hands onto colored paper, cut them out, and glued them together to make a freestanding rainbow of helping hands. "I feel like I've stepped into Disneyland every time I walk into this room," my doctor laughed. And that was even before the 6-foot apple blossom tree arrived, adorned with messages written on paper apples from the students and teachers. What healing comfort I found in being surrounded by these tokens of their caring. At long last, I was well enough to return to work. As I headed up the road to school, I was suddenly overcome by doubts. What if the kids have forgotten all about me? I wondered. What if they don't want a skinny, bald principal? What if I caught sight of the school marquee as I rounded the bend? "Welcome back, Dr. Perry," it read. As I drew closer, everywhere I looked were pink ribbons. Ribbons in windows, tied on the doorknobs, even up in the trees. The children and the staff wore pink ribbons too, and my little blonde buddy was first in line to greet me. "You're back, Dr. Perry, you're back," she called. "See, I told you we'd take care of you." I love that little story of the breast cancer helpers. Those children, you see, those children became the mothers at that point in time. They became the ones that were doing what was necessary and needed for her in order for her to get well in the way that she needed to. And not only that, but they brought a transformative healing presence and experience into the chemotherapy area, not just for her, but for everybody who was in there having chemotherapy and being able to experience that. The nurses, the doctors, the specialists, and the other patients. There was a mothering gift that was given by the teachers and by the children back to their principal. Sometimes mothering gets reversed. So finally, I want to share this idea from Dr. Ernest Holmes, our founder in Ideas for Living. He says this: "Love overlooks the little differences that we have and finds a point of reconciliation with others. Love creates tolerance and human understanding, without which we become really divided against ourselves, and without which we almost unconsciously become filled with criticism, condemnation, and false judgment. No one can be happy or enjoy the greatest fulfillment in life until he's come to see that most people try to do about the best they can. And when we're able to reach out beyond the indifference and coldness of life, reach through all the intolerance and unkindness, only then do we meet that divine center which is forever established within every person." This divine center is established in us. It's established in us when we feel centered and we're connecting with other people in that loving, centered, focused way. But it's also within us when we're crabby, when we're telling somebody else what to do, when we're annoyed with our siblings or our mother. We don't lose that capacity, that presence, and it will come back around. So when we mother ourselves, we forgive not only others, but also ourselves for those moments when we're less than skilled. And so as we celebrate mothering today, whatever your relationship was with your mom, whatever you think of yourself as a mom in any of these roles I've mentioned, today is the day to claim the deep mother within you, the one who is not only now called to nurture you, but also to pass on that deep nurturing, knowing that the universe and everything that's in it loves you no matter what. Namaste. Happy Mother's Day.